I want to welcome everybody back. I want to welcome everybody back. This is the third of our fourth presentations with me. I've sent everybody new whiteboard notes so that you should all have them by now. So we're going to just do a quick recap of study number 2. So in study number 2, we obviously began with a recap of number 1. So I'm not going to go into most of what we discussed. So we're looking at comparing and contrasting radical feminism with liberal feminism. And we try to look at what the primary objective for both was. And we find out that they're actually the same. So there are some subtle differences which we, in my think, we haven't still defined clearly. So they're both looking for reform. We had 3 questions that we've discussed. And question number 3 is the one that we're not going to pursue. So when we spoke about liberal feminism, we had a definition that they work within the system. And we changed the word system to institutions in our second presentation. We came to the conclusion that they're limited in what they can achieve. And that's the question that we asked in blue. I think we agreed that they can't achieve 100% social reform. We then looked at radical feminism. And we brainstormed a number of concepts or ideas. And the question was, just as a reminder, how do radical feminists achieve social reform? So we brainstormed 9 words. And I think you'll all see that many of them are just really synonyms or just they talk about the same idea or the same concept. Destroying the old is the same as creating the new. So that was a summary of presentation number 1 with some additional pieces of information. This is where we went into study number 2. As discussed here, we changed the word system to institutions. And that's what it says here. System equals institutions. And then what we explored was the difference between within the system or outside of the institutions. And in the American model, whether it's the federal system or the state system, they work the same way. And I gave a simple definition that when we talk about the system or the institutions, what we're referring to is the legal framework of how a society operates or functions. So if you're either going to look at the political or the legal system of a society, a country, it encompasses 100%. There are no gaps. And if we define the system or society or the institutions in this way, then when it says here, number 9, the last one, we work outside of the system, you realize that working outside the system means some kind of illegal activity. Hopefully we're all okay with that. I asked the question, is it okay to do illegal activities? Most said no, but several people said yes. And I don't think I gave the Bible references in the study, but I've put them here now. Romans chapter 13 and Titus chapter 3. Depending on how you read these verses or what Bible version you use, there are slightly different connotations, but the conclusion is, as is written on the board, you need to submit the government, you need to obey the rules. So I asked the question, was Paul a radical? And if you go to a biblical answer, we went to, I don't think I gave the Bible verse itself, but we went to Acts 17. We were told that he turned the world upside down. And I'm suggesting that the word world, as used in the King James, is the same thing as the system, is the same thing as pagan Rome. And there's no evidence that he actually destroyed or challenged pagan Rome. He was just never powerful enough to do that. He got killed by the system. And depending on what story you want to tell, pagan Rome goes on for another 500 years. And if you looked at the same history and told a slightly different story, you see that pagan Rome is still here with us. Just depends how you want to define what Rome is. In reality, he just turned a few people around. We discussed some examples or some evidence of his radicalism. First Corinthians chapter 11, he's clear that women should conform to the social norms of the time. At the same time, he's saying in Colossians 3 and Galatians 3 that everybody is equal. And then, again, we didn't discuss the verse, but Philippians chapter 1, you see that he accepts and supports slavery. So that's not Philippians, that's Philemon. The book Philemon. This wasn't quite in order because we spoke a little bit about this somewhere in the presentation, but I've just tagged it on at the end. So this plays into the question that we need to address when we talk about the difference between liberal and radical feminism. And we spoke about the difference between rights and privilege. I asked when the rights in the United States were afforded the citizens here. In our class, someone said it was 105 years, but I've got 156. So I just calculated it from the 14th Amendment. And if you go to 105 years, you get to the 19th. So someone says, what? So someone's going to say that, so I'll put it back 105. No, I won't put it back here because this is an older one. So 105 years goes to voting. And I went to the 14th, equal protection under the law. So then we looked at privilege, and I just said that privilege is still alive and well. Because it resists change. That's the end of study 2. And that's the quick recap. Gloria?
So pagan role, would you say that's spiritualism? And then would you connect that to UN now?
So Gloria's asked about pagan Rome. And I guess what I meant by it still being alive today. Yeah. So where would you normally put pagan Rome coming to its end? We'll go with 538. AD 538. And I said, depending on what story you want to tell, you can see that it's still pretty much functioning now. So let's not go to our present history. Can you stretch pagan Rome past 538, anybody?
What was the question?
Want to say something?
What was the question? Can you repeat the question?
Can we take pagan Rome a little bit further than 538?
The beginning and the end. Or those.
I want a title or a phrase or a concept that takes pagan Rome way past 538, even if you can't bring it to today. Right? Francie? So you can go to the book of Daniel 2 and you can see it all the way through, if that's how you choose to do it. The legs of iron, pagan Rome. And then it goes into the feet and the toes. So the war against, either we call it Islam or Arabia or the Ottoman Empire, who are they fighting against when they... Who's the east wind battling against centuries after 538? It's got a different title now. Centuries after, it's not called pagan Rome, it's got a different title. Claudia? Claudia? You said, I thought you said something.
Sorry.
I'm going to misspell this. Who's going to finish it off for me?
T-I-N.
T-I-N, not A-N.
No, from there.
Oh.
No, and then E. O P-L-E. Yes.
Is that it? That looks wrong.
The emperor. Constantinople is.
Okay, I'm going to change that to hide my shame. And I'm going to call it the Eastern Roman Empire, Constantinople. Oh, that's even wrong.
Yeah, it melded in with the. There you go. King of the North.
Yep, we can go with the King of the North. King of the North is if we use King of the North, it gets complicated. The complication is in Babylon, you have two things combined. Church and state. As soon as you get to pagan Rome, you're still at church and state combined. By 538, they separate. You have the papal church, which is purple, and they're going to use the armies of the states around them. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So I think Claudio gave you the right answer. If you're going to come to today, it's the USA. We could argue, I guess, that the UN plays a part in it. Depends what the issue is. Okay, so any questions? Do you want to go back to yesterday? We want to discuss how social reform is achieved by radical feminists. And we need to consider also how liberal feminists do this. When we spoke about radical feminist, people added a couple of other things. What are the things here that we could pick on which are really different to liberal feminism? Work outside is very different. I'm going to say personal influence. And I'm going to put a question mark for change of mindset. Anything else? To destroy the old and to create the new, I think become problematic. So if we use the definitions that we've already discussed, we get some problems that several of you have highlighted. So using the ideas or the concepts that we've already discussed, we ask ourselves, are we radical feminists? And what are your answers? I'll ask a different question. I say we, but it should be you. Answer for yourself. Are you a liberal feminist? Put your hand up if you're a liberal feminist. 3 people, 4. Numbers are increasing. 5. For those who have said they are, what do you mark as a liberal feminist for yourself? What's your marker to say that that's what you are? Sarah?
Within the system.
So Sarah says that she works within the system. And an example of that would be that she's going to vote in the system this November, as an example. Yeah, separate to your age. Sure. Gloria?
Same thing.
The same. Anyone else who else had their hand up? Lily? Oh, I saw Emmanuel's hand up. So the same thing that was said before. So the people who put their hand up who said that they identify as liberal feminists are all saying that they work within the system. And here in the United States, an example of that is that they will vote. And they will vote for people who they don't even agree with on, if they had 10 policies, they may not agree on 5 of them. Whatever the percentage is, these people are entering into a system and supporting people that don't see things the same way that they do. So Kennedy's out of the race now, so there are only 2 people. So assume you're going to vote for Harris. And I'm guessing you don't agree with everything that she says or stands for. Especially her economic policy. Is that a fair representation, a fair statement? Okay, so the rest of you who didn't put your hands up, does that mean none of you are going to vote? So my question was, I asked who are liberal, and only about 3 people put their hand up. And the example of working within the system is to vote. This November. And the person that they're going to vote for, which is, I'm guessing it's going to be Harris, they don't even agree with several things that several of her policies. So they defined their identity, these few people, by their actions. Second. If that's the case, for those of you who didn't put your hand up to be as being liberal, if you're going to do the same action as your fellow members, you're still not identifying as being liberal the same way they do. So you see things differently, I guess. Or you have a different explanation. Okay, so Francisco, that's my question. I began by saying, are you going to vote? So if you vote, does that make you liberal or not? Go ahead.
You involved, you know, as a participant in the political system.
So it makes you involved, you're participating in the political system, which is what liberals do. But you don't identify as that. So I'll let a couple of people say more, then I'll ask a secondary question. Do you want to say something?
Can't you do both? Vote, because there's no way to get things forward without voting, and also be willing to do some things that aren't within the system.
So Christine has said that radical feminists you didn't say it this way, but I'm going to say it this way. Tell me if you say yes or no. First of all, are liberal feminists required to vote? She said yes. Liberal. Second question, Christine. Are radical feminists required to vote? Your answer is no.
I think we have to.
Oh, yes, you said. Okay. So she said radical feminists are required to vote. If you agree with her, or even if you don't, or she's changed her mind, but on Thursday and Friday, you didn't put work within the system here for radical feminists. Radical feminism. I've asked you, are they required to vote? You said yes. And voting for Harris is working within the system. So for all of you who didn't vote that you're liberal and you're going to vote at the elections this year, then either you've developed your thinking on radical feminism, or you forgot to add, what did we put here, Christine? Within. Eva and then Victoria.
Oh, I want to say that I wanted to raise my hand.
Yeah.
Are you a radical feminist? So I just didn't want to do it because I didn't want to face the next question. Right. you asked that.
Okay, so Eva put her hand up to mark what? That you're radical.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just didn't dare to, because I didn't want to say the question.
Then she put her hand down because she thought, I'm going to ask her a question. Which I am. So, are radical feminists required to vote, Eva?
Yes.
Do you agree with Christine? You want to say something?
No, I'm not sure if you're right.
Oh, no, Eva. Eva agrees with you. Victoria. Victoria's question or thoughts were already addressed. Kathy?
Define what working within the system means.
Kathy says we haven't defined what it means to work within the system. Kathy, do you agree that an example of working within the system means that you will vote?
Participating.
Because you marked 105 years as voting. Go ahead.
My understanding, working within the system means to incorporate women into the systems of government.
So your understanding of working within the system is to have women participate in the system. At any and every level. You've got to wait because I've got a translator. Make your point.
So they want to incorporate systems of for women specifically because they liberal feminism.
I can't get all of that translated, sorry. I should keep it really simple.
They want to have more women in the political system.
So liberal feminists want more women in the system.
How I understand.
An example of that would be voting. More women have to vote for more women politicians.
Yes, they have to fund.
Go ahead.
I agree with that. And as citizens, we all are required to vote.
As citizens, she agreed with that comment I made, and as citizens, we're all required to vote. So, as a citizen who rejects the current system, are you required to vote for it? As a citizen that rejects the current system, are you required to vote for it and participate in it?
Not to pretend.
Kathy said no, but I think earlier she said yes. I want us to be clear in our own mind as we approach November, as you do, whoever you identify as, the system is corrupt. The few people who said that they're liberal have resign themselves to the fact that they will work with a corrupt system. Because they're going to vote for Harris. And Harris is as guilty as anybody of being part of the corrupt system. However you define corrupt. So that's to Kathy. What do you agree or disagree with what I've just said? Sorry? Kathy said, now what? That's my question to you. Now, what are you going to do? However you identified as radical because you didn't put your hand up as liberal. Will you participate voluntarily, or are you required? I'm going to say by law, not US law. Are you required by law to participate? How do you approach this problem? The reason I'm asking the question is because those on the left who identify as radical are now saying they're going to work within the system. And I think they bordered on saying, if not definitively, that they're required to do that. The liberals are cool. They've got it all okay. They're covered. It's the radicals that are in a hard place, potentially. Unless you see Harris part of the corrupt system. And if we're going to identify, loosely speaking, her as the establishment, last time it was whom? Hillary. She was the establishment. And the establishment is good or bad. Compared to the alternative, it might be better. But are any of us going to say it's the solution? The only reason she's here is because of what? Why is she here now? Here being, why is she the nominee? Don't use the word Biden. Say something more toxic.
The establishment named Biden stepped down.
Because a white old man said, "I'm tired, you take over." If that's not as corrupt as it gets, I don't know what is. Go ahead.
The alternative candidate opposite.
No, I don't argue that she's not better. But when she chose her VP, without discussing it, who and what did she choose? She chose the system, the establishment. And why? I'm going to guess because she's a clever person and she knows the difference between a glass ceiling and a glass cliff. And she knows which one she's been handed. And so that's why she has to choose that VP to try to save herself from the glass cliff. She chose that vice president to try to save herself from the glass cliff that's been handed to her. This study is not going to define what a glass cliff is. Yeah. Members need to, they can translate the word, but they need to go back on the internet and check what a glass cliff is. We'll call it Mission Impossible. That's the nut. Okay. Okay. Are we done, Kathy? We okay? Okay. Gloria?
Elaborate on Harris's bad economic policy. Could you?
Someone wants me to comment on Harris's economic policy. I can't do it in this class. It's too much of a distraction. Except to say, it's not following the rules or the ideology of democracy, the Democrats. That's what I mean by democracy. She's not following what they're supposed to do, who they're supposed to be representing. Back to the question. Liberal feminists are required to vote. Put your hands up if you believe radical feminists are required to vote. Keep your hands up. To vote within the system. To vote to keep the system propped up. If you're putting your hands down, you're not being logically consistent. You put our hands down now. Thank you. So online, hopefully, even though you didn't see people here putting their hand up, you got the point. We might not be able to explain or define it when I ask for definitions. But everybody here has a gut feeling, a gut reaction. Or they live, or they're pragmatic, I don't know which. Should we be pragmatic? Most people say yes. Should we be principled? More people said yes. Is pragmatism and being principled very different? Or are they the same? Because I think they're quite different. Okay, so we've agreed that radical feminists are required to work within the system. So we've made some progress. Isabel?
I feel that I have to climb in the government on the framework to destroy it.
So Isabel's given the imagery that if you want to bring down the scaffolding or a structure, you have to climb it and take it apart piece by piece. Can you hear me? Oh, if you want to break down a structure, you have to get involved with it to dismantle it. I guess in English, you'd say you have to get your hands dirty. So on our board, I'm going to have to say that both of these have to work within the system, which an example of is they're going to vote this November. Christine?
Trump and the Republican Party is gonna do that. By being in the system, getting Trump in there, they're going to end up destroying it intentionally.
So Christine said that Trump is going to get into the system and destroy it. And then she just said democracy. So the system that we've been speaking about the system, the world, the institutions, we might want to call them democracy, but it's really patriarchy.
Destroying it, he's making it worse, reinforcing.
So Trump isn't destroying anything. Good, he's propping it up. So we've established that radical feminists and liberal feminists, in the framework that we've discussed, working within the system, are the same. As soon as you say that, then you're forced to come to this conclusion. Liberal feminism we've been discussing the hows of radical feminism. What's the biblical command? I'll give you the clue. It's starred. It's got a star here. And we discussed it here. What's the biblical command? Sue Ellen?
Is it render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and unto God that which is God?
Sue Ellen said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. She spoke about God, but I've left that bit out. According to the definitions that we had before, radical feminists, you said collectively, are required to work outside of the system which means they would do things that are illegal. Is it okay to do illegal things? Inspiration says no. So you can do what you want, but inspiration says you shouldn't be doing illegal things. 1 second. We don't have time to discuss it, but ask yourself, to go back to the books, the documentaries, or the movies that you've seen, was the civil rights movement legal or illegal? Is civil disobedience legal or illegal?
Is legal. First Amendment of the Constitution.
So I don't know if we're 100% on the same page on that question, but we don't have time to discuss it, but it's an important point to consider in our discussion. So, just go back to that. If we're going to say that we're going to work within the system, then we're on this page for liberal feminism. And what's the consequence of working within the institutions? What's the consequence of that? Claudia?
We have to look at Daniel 2, the stone, it's killing the statue.
So Claudio has taken us to Daniel chapter 2. The stone is destroying the statue.
Within, we cannot achieve anything.
So he says within, we can't achieve anything. We may not be able to finish it at this camp meeting, but I want us to all hold that thought in our minds about working within and working without. And how we overlay prophetic models, such as Daniel 2, into our understanding. Okay, so if you're going to work within the system, what follows on is the second point. You'll be limited in what you can do. So radical feminists, in the same framework that we are discussing, the institutions, they're going to be limited in what they can achieve. Which means that they can't get 100% because they can't get to the root of the problem. Hopefully we all agree now, if not before, voting for the Democrats this November is not even scratching the surface with respect to addressing the root of the problem. Maybe it's a little scratch or a small incremental change. Assuming that she was to win. But what happens in 4 years? It all gets undone again. So as soon as you start working within the system, which you've agreed that you're required to do as a radical feminist, you confine yourself to the reality that you are not addressing the root of the problem. Just ask one more point. And that, I think, is why when we looked at this page, they look so similar. In the framework in which we're discussing, there's no difference between the two because they're going to behave the same way. Victoria.
Commenting on scratching the surface, but if we didn't do anything, then no surface would be covered, so. I mean, we wouldn't get.
One second. So Victoria said, when I mentioned the idea of scratching the surface, if we don't do anything, nothing will get done. Which is the same ideology or thinking that liberal feminists have. We say liberal feminists or liberal feminism achieves change by incremental changes. It's part of their thinking, they're part of their process. Victoria? Are you sure? Anyone else want to comment?
So the way you are displaying this is like we have to forget the idea of being, becoming a radical feminist.
So Manuel says the way that this study has gone, the path that it's taken, seems to indicate that we should forget the idea of being radical. Because it all seems so liberal. So that's his perspective so far. Alyssa?
I'm just thinking of Pauline radical, like being as knowing when to be against the system, as in teaching people about equality and knowing when to work within it.
So Alyssa said that we should be the type of radical feminist that Paul was. That's the point you made, yes? So we pick and choose when we fight against the system and when we use the system to our advantage. So we use the system when it's to our advantage and we fight against it when we don't like it. What a principled way to live.
Wise as serpent as harmless as dove.
Alyssa said that she's very wise. Like serpents. Christine.
I was thinking that, maybe right now there's not a whole lot of things that where we would do illegally, but if Trump does get
So
elected,
Christina said at the moment, because the weather's fair, we don't have to do illegal things. But
when Trump gets elected, there may be things that we have to do that are illegal because the laws that he creates will be against God's laws.
so when Trump gets into power, we will have to do illegal things because some of those laws will be against God's law. Can you think of one?
I can think of one right now. They make it illegal to give people water in line while they're voting. I mean,
So at the moment, there's a law that says when people queue up to vote, that you're not allowed to give them a bottle of water. Because it's political interference. And Christine would break the law for that. Me? I'd sell them the bottle. Okay, so
I think the laws will be worse than that. You know,
another one?
abortion.
Helping someone.
You know.
So someone said about abortion or medical interventions of any kind, I'm guessing.
Helping somebody if she wants.
So if it turns out that it's illegal all across America, and you can't get access to some secret underground organization, what would you do? A simple thing that you could do. What's that?
Drive them to Mexico.
I don't know why people laughed, because that's the obvious answer. You drive them to Mexico or fly them to Mexico. And is that illegal? Is that illegal? To give someone a plane ticket to go to Mexico?
Oh, to Mexico.
Sorry?
Not just to Mexico. They can have a vacation, but if it's for that purpose, that's illegal.
So Alyssa said she was wise a minute ago. You just tell them somebody they're going on holiday to Mexico. I'm just trying to point out that you don't have to break the law. Even under a draconian Republican administration, can't remember what I said. Draconian, a dictatorship. It's easy to circumvent those laws. It's really easy to do that. If you're prepared to do illegal stuff against the Bible, are you prepared to lie? So just lie and you're not breaking the law. Sorry?
Or there's detection of if a period tracking, and if a woman stops her period and then.
Sure. There's whatever complications they can throw at you, it's easy to get around them. It's that you're technically not breaking the law. It's relatively easy, I think. And with respect to water, I don't know why people don't just bring their own water. I just don't get that. Sue Ellen?
That's why we have to compare that to the abolitionists and the fugitive slave law.
So we have the abolitionists and the fugitive slave law. So anybody want to comment on that?
Underground law, but I'm not sure like what this means.
Last bit.
I'm not sure where Sue Ellen was going, but I just.
Sue Ellen's making the point that the Underground Railway was illegal, I think.
Was also
So it's the same point that Lisa made. If they're going to go, or Christine, if they go against God's law, then we can break it.
Can't break God's law.
Emmanuel?
On the underground law. So it's like right now, time like leaving the red state, going to blue state. So back then it was like that. So you can see how she was doing that, leaving the underground. So,
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to translate that.
about the underground road back then. Right now, it's like, blue state and red state. You living in the red state because the abortion restriction, going to the blue state to get abortion.
So Emmanuel's saying that the underground railway wasn't even illegal. I think he's saying that. In some states it was legal, in some states it wasn't.
They're trying to make it illegal to move to another state to get an abortion.
Yes, they're trying to do many things. Like preventing you from having freedom of movement. But I guess all that has to get tested against the Constitution.
Doesn't the state,
Sorry?
does it anymore? Does that even matter anymore?
Someone asked, does it matter? It does, because if you don't agree with the state, you take it to the Supreme Court. If you're going to say to the Supreme Court, we already know what they're going to say, that's a different issue.
Does it matter? So we-
If it didn't matter, you wouldn't vote. Matter.
Voting for Harris if she wins, it's only a stopgap, it's only band-aid.
So either we vote or we don't vote. If we become fatalistic, then just let it all burn. We have to be certain what our duty is. And if you have either a religious or, when I say moral, I mean secular moral duty to vote, you can't become fatalistic about the situation in the States, can you? You can't, I don't see how you can have it both ways.
I think the cup's almost full.
The cup's almost full. I'll go with that. I'm happy with that. Zach? Go ahead. What I'm trying to say is, based on what we've looked at and all of your comments, when I ask simple questions, we seem to get answers that are counterintuitive. So it's not something that I'm trying to say or to teach. I'm just trying to ask simple questions so that we can understand who we are. So I'm guessing that when you look at what's on the board, you can see that just what's on the board, there's no difference between the two. So either that means there is no such thing as radical feminism, or our understanding needs changing. I've tried not to trick people or deceive them. Because when we spoke here about liberal feminism and its limitations, we then went on to radical feminism, and I asked the exact same question in the exact same framework. And I think it's a cliche, but using that methodology, I believe, is correct, not incorrect. It should be empowering, and I don't think it's deceptive. So there was a question at a previous camp meeting recently. I think it was something either about law or love. I think it was law. I think it's something like God is law or God's law. And you can't have God's law. I think that's the point I wanted to show. Because it builds upon this model that you're working outside of God. There's something separate to God. When we speak about illegal activities, I'm not trying to suggest that we shouldn't have practical solutions to water or to abortion. But what I am saying is, it seems to me, if we look at the great controversy, the two sides of right and wrong, good against evil, which is the party that can do illegal activities? Because the moment God does something illegal, what happens? The controversy is over. And Satan has been proved to be correct. That's the point I wanted us to see about illegal activities. As soon as you start going down that path and you begin to look at it at a universal scale, you realize that you've lost the war. You had 1 second. So I don't want to talk about the human. I understand the issue about the human need to have hydration and autonomy over our bodies. I understand that. And I'm not resisting those ideas. We're not fighting against Trump. We're fighting against principalities and powers in high places. And if you don't think they have the wherewithal, the mental capability of manipulating whom? Who would they manipulate? And it's not Trump. It's you. They know how to push your buttons. And if they get to a place that they create a system that makes you react or resist that system in an illegal way, you've already failed. And the problem is, if we're the 144,000, like we claim, who's relying upon us? Two groups or two people? Everyone that died before us and God. If we fail individually and corporately, the controversy is lost. So I'm not saying that about the water issue or the abortion issue. It's a broader issue than that. If we take up arms, if we resist the government in some way that is not appropriate, or we just become fatalistic about the end, controversy is lost. And it's designed to do that. Why does Satan want to attack Job? And when he does attack Job, where does he want Job to be in his experience? He wants him to believe that everything is fatalistic and there's no point in carrying on. He may as well just give up. That's why he doesn't get killed. He doesn't need to kill him. So, as you were saying, we're at the end, the cup is almost full. What's the point? I wouldn't suggest that's the story of Satan's attack against Job. And if you can understand that piece of the puzzle, with illegal and illegal modes of operation, you're forced to confront your biggest fears of why God allows Satan to attack us. To create a system that is designed to destroy you. It just needs to destroy your faith. That's all that Satan needs to do. Lose your hope. What I wanted to show, when we go outside the system, it may appear to be the right thing to do. In fact, the only thing to do. But it creates more problems than it solves. So we have to stop there a bit over time. And I just want to finish these thoughts off next time. What we've agreed when we talk about working within the system, an example of that was voting. There's no difference between the two. Which is why this movement several years ago said it's your religious duty to vote. Because this movement recognized that you have to work within the system as a radical feminist. Which means you're not supposed to work outside of the system. Which is quite different to where we had started our conversations at this camp meeting. Let's pray. Holy God, we thank you that we have the privilege of working closely with you in the words that you gave us, that we can be your counterpart. Individually and corporately, give us faith. Give us courage. Give us determination that we will not become weary in well-doing, that we will not become tired. In Jesus' name. Amen.